There is a name in football that carries more heartbreak than any other of his generation. A name that was supposed to sit next to Pelé, Ronaldo, and Ronaldinho in the pantheon of Brazilian gods. A name that was gift-wrapped by nature with everything a footballer could ever ask for. Speed, vision, feet blessed by heaven, a left foot that could paint miracles, and a right one that could finish them. And yet, when the final page of his career gets written, the world is not going to remember him for the trophies he lifted. The world is going to remember him for the ones he never even touched. That name is Neymar Junior. And in the next 45 minutes, we are going to walk you through the single most tragic collapse in modern football history. From the barefoot kid on the streets of São Vicente, to the 22-year-old shattering scoring records at Santos, to the poster boy of a $222 million circus in Paris, all the way down to the 32-year-old, sitting in a Riyadh mansion, cashing checks and scrolling through videos of Vinicius Junior and Kylian Mbappé fighting over the crown that was supposed to be his. This is the full anatomy of a genius who had it all, and threw most of it away. If you clicked on this video, chances are there's a suspicion sitting in the back of your mind. Maybe you loved him. Maybe you hated him. Maybe you were the kid in a schoolyard somewhere trying to copy his rainbow flick against a defender who did not appreciate it. Either way, the question has been eating at football fans for a decade. Was Neymar simply unlucky? Was he a victim of injuries, of arrogant federations, of a man named Lionel Messi standing eternally in his way? Or did Neymar Jr. build the coffin of his own legacy with his own two hands, one Rio de Janeiro carnival at a time? Because that part of the story, the part that Brazilian television refuses to say out loud, is exactly why this video exists. Our team spent weeks combing through more than 100 matches, mapping every serious injury from 2013 to 2024, cross-referencing paparazzi footage from Paris nightclubs, tracking every leaked photo from his private island in Mangaratiba, and comparing his numbers against every other superstar of his generation. What we found is not clean, is not a simple villain story, and it is not a simple victim story either. It is something a lot more uncomfortable. It is the story of a man who was handed the keys to football history and drove the car straight off a cliff, laughing, popping champagne, and letting the DJ turn up the bass on the way down. Stick with us until the end, because there's one specific stretch of 5 days between two international matches, 5 days that almost no major channel dares to break down publicly, that we believe was the exact moment when Neymar stopped being a footballer chasing greatness and started being a celebrity chasing a mood. When you see the timeline laid out with the flights, the guest lists, and the training sessions he missed the following week, you're going to understand why so many people inside the Selecao turned their backs on him in silence. And why the man he could have been is a very different person from a man he chose to become. But before we get to Paris, before we get to the parties, and before we get to the injuries that arrived like clockwork every February, we have to go back to the beginning. Because to understand how brutal the fall really was, you first have to understand how impossibly high this kid was flying. And his story does not start in a stadium. It does not start on a magazine cover. It starts in a modest coastal town where a skinny little boy with a mop of curls and shoes 2 sizes too big was already doing things with a football that grown men could not. His name was about to shake the planet, and nobody outside of Santos even knew it yet. The town was called São Vicente on the coast of São Paulo state, and in the early 2000s it looked like 1,000 other Brazilian coastal towns. Cracked sidewalks, dirt lots turned into makeshift pitches, the smell of the ocean mixing with the smell of grilled meat from the corner bars. And in that town lived a young father named Neymar Santos, a former lower division defender whose career had been cut short by a car crash, and his son, a wiry little boy who could not sit still for more than 10 seconds unless there was a football at his feet. That boy did not walk. He shuffled with a ball. He did not run. He dribbled. When the family could not afford a real ball, his father made him juggle rolled-up socks in the kitchen. When they moved into a cramped apartment shared with grandparents and uncles, the boy practiced feints in the hallway. It was not cute. It was obsession. And by the time he turned 7 years old, the futsal scouts in the region were already whispering about the kid from the Santos suburbs who could beat 6 defenders in a phone booth. Santos Football Club, the same club that had produced a young Edson Arantes do Nascimento decades earlier, snapped him up. They put him in the academy. They paid the family a modest stipend to keep the boy fed. And from that moment on, Neymar Jr. belonged to Brazil. By the time he was 17 years old, he was already the face of the Santos first team, drawing sold-out crowds to Vila Belmiro that had not been packed since the 60s. Chelsea came calling with a bid worth £20 million. Neymar smiled politely and signed a new contract with Santos instead. His father was orchestrating the moves carefully. Every appearance, every haircut, every sponsorship deal, everything was being managed to build a global brand before the boy even set foot in Europe. And on the pitch, he was delivering the kind of highlights that were breaking YouTube view counts back when YouTube was still figuring out what a superstar looked like. Then came the Copa Libertadores of 2011. Neymar was 19 years old. Santos versus Flamengo, a group stage match that should have been ordinary, ended up producing one of the most audacious goals of the 21st century. He picked up the ball on the left. He dribbled through 3 defenders as if they were traffic cones. He nutmegged a fourth. He rounded the goalkeeper and slotted it in with the outside of his boot. A few months later, that goal won him the FIFA Puskas Award, an honor that has gone to Cristiano Ronaldo, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and Lionel Messi. Neymar was the youngest winner in the ceremony's history. He was also, by that point, appearing on more Brazilian magazine covers than any active politician. His hair changed every 3 matches. He walked out of nightclubs in Guarujá with entourages of 10 and 11 friends, all wearing matching flat-brim caps. The Brazilian press invented a nickname for the group. They called it the Parça, a slang term for close friends, and it would follow him for the rest of his career. Some of those Parça members from São Vicente are still on his payroll to this very day. Remember that detail because it matters later when you start asking how a professional athlete ends up flying dozens of people to Paris just to play video games with him during the season. By 2013, Neymar had scored 136 goals for Santos, won 3 Campeonato Paulista titles, 1 Copa Libertadores, and a Confederations Cup with Brazil. He had humiliated Iker Casillas and the Spanish Golden Generation in the Maracana final. He had been called the most exciting player on earth by everyone from Pelé to Zico. He was 21 years old, and every scout in Europe agreed on one thing. This kid was going to be the next Ballon d'Or winner. Not maybe, not possibly, inevitably. Barcelona won the race for his signature. The number 10 shirt at the Camp Nou, the same shirt that had belonged to Ronaldinho and Rivaldo and Maradona, was waiting for him. Neymar packed his bags. He kissed his mother goodbye. He posed for the cameras next to Sandro Rosell and Andres Iniesta. He put on the cool colors for the first time. And he stepped onto the biggest stage on the planet with the world absolutely certain that within 3 years he would be the best footballer alive. The world was wrong, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Before we even get to Barcelona, before we get to Messi, before we get to the shadow that would define the rest of his career, we have to talk about the summer that made Neymar Junior a national religion in Brazil. The year was 2014. The World Cup was coming home. For the first time since 1950, when the Maracanazo had scarred the nation's soul in the loss to Uruguay, Brazil was hosting the tournament. The pressure was not just heavy. It was suffocating. 200 million people were watching. Every bar in every favela had a television bolted to the wall. Every rooftop had a flag. And every single one of those flags had the same name written on it in yellow ink. Neymar, Camisa 10, the savior. Luis Felipe Scolari, the manager who had won the 2002 World Cup with the trio of Ronaldo, Rivaldo, and Ronaldinho, made a decision that was equal parts brave and reckless. He built the entire Selecao around one 22-year-old. The tactics revolved around him. The set-piece routines revolved around him. The press conferences revolved around him. Fred was there for pretend. Hulk was there to run channels. But the ball and the responsibility went to Neymar every single time. And for a few glorious weeks, he delivered. The opening match against Croatia, a nervous, jittery affair that Brazil desperately needed to survive, was rescued by Neymar with 2 goals, including a nerveless penalty when the entire nation was holding its breath. For goals in the group stage, a star turn against Cameroon, a country falling in love all over again. Then came the round of 16 against Chile, a match so tense it aged everyone who watched it by about 10 years, and it went all the way to penalties. Who stepped up when Brazil needed the last kick? Neymar, cold, focused, staring straight through the goalkeeper. Buried it in the top corner. Sent his country to the quarterfinals. By that point, the myth was cementing. He was not just a footballer anymore. He was Brazil's answer to Cristiano and Lionel. The heir apparent to Pelé. The talisman. And then came Colombia. The quarterfinal in Fortaleza was a brutal, chippy affair. 28 fouls in the first half alone. Colombia had decided the only way to stop Brazil was to stop Neymar physically, and the referee let it happen. Every 10 minutes, another crunching tackle. Every 10 minutes, another shove in the back. In the 88th minute, with the match essentially decided, the Colombian defender, Juan Zúñiga, launched himself with a knee straight into Neymar's lower spine. The scream Neymar let out in that moment is still on YouTube. It is one of the most disturbing sounds you will ever hear from an athlete. He was carried off on a stretcher, crying, holding his back, knowing something was wrong. The diagnosis came a few hours later. Fractured third vertebra. Season over. Tournament over. Dream over. What happened 4 days later was not just a defeat. It was the closest thing modern football has come to a public execution. Germany beat Brazil 7-1 in the semi-final in Belo Horizonte. 7 goals. In one half. The most historic humiliation in the history of the sport. Grown men wept openly in the stadium. David Luiz apologized to the entire country on live television. And Neymar, watching from a hospital bed with painkillers coursing through his body, understood something that would shape the rest of his career. He understood how much Brazil needed him. And he understood what Brazil would do to him if he ever failed. That trauma, and it was a trauma, did not just live in Neymar's back. It lived in his head. From that moment on, every international tournament came with a weight that no other player in the world was carrying. He was not just playing for glory. He was playing to prevent another 7-1. To exorcise a ghost. To heal a nation. He would try. Over and over and over again. And every single time something would go wrong. A referee. An injury. A missed penalty. A card. It was almost as if the universe had decided that the boy who was supposed to save Brazilian football would spend the rest of his career watching it slip through his fingers. But that was all still ahead of him. In August of 2014, when he flew back to Barcelona to begin his second season in Europe, he had bigger problems to solve. His debut year had been quiet. Too quiet. The critics were already whispering. Was he really the next big thing? Or was he just another highly hyped South American who could not handle La Liga? The answer was about to come. And it was going to be violent. The 2014 to 2015 Barcelona side is one of the finest club teams ever assembled. It is not a matter of opinion. It is a matter of trophies, of goals, of collective art. And the reason it worked, the reason it steamrolled Europe, was a 3-word abbreviation that would tattoo itself onto football history forever. MSN. Messi. Suarez. Neymar. Luis Enrique arrived in the summer and made a decision that changed everything. He took the ball away from the midfield-dominant, tiki-taka rhythm of the Guardiola era and put it directly into the feet of his front three. Xavi was leaving. Iniesta was aging. Busquets was still there, but the identity of the team was shifting. The instruction was simple. Get the ball forward. Let those three destroy people. Everyone else, run and cover. It worked immediately. Neymar, who had scored a modest 15 goals in his debut season, exploded. He finished 2014 to 2015 with 39 goals across all competitions. He scored in the Copa del Rey final against Athletic Bilbao. He tore Bayern Munich apart in the Champions League semi-final, humiliating Jerome Boateng in ways the German defender still has nightmares about. And on the night of June 6, 2015, in the Olympiastadion in Berlin, Neymar Junior stood on the podium as a Champions League winner, screaming into the sky, holding the trophy above his head, one arm around Messi, the other around Suarez. They had won the treble. La Liga, Copa del Rey, Champions League. Combined, the front three scored 122 goals in a single season. It was, statistically, the most productive attacking trio in the history of European football. And Neymar was undeniably 1/3 of it. He was also off the pitch, becoming a very different kind of celebrity. If you look at photos of Neymar from the Santos era, you see a shy kid who let his father talk for him. If you look at photos of Neymar from 2015 onward, you see a global brand. Nike had signed him to a lifetime deal. Panasonic, Beats by Dre, Gillette, Red Bull, and Konami had all come knocking. He was on the cover of every glossy magazine from Sao Paulo to Shanghai. He was posting Instagram photos from Ibiza in the middle of preseason. His hair was blonde one month, pink the next, buzz the month after. And the parka was traveling with him everywhere. There is a story from that era that never really made major English-language headlines, but every Brazilian journalist knows it. During the summer of 2015, right after the Champions League triumph, Neymar reportedly flew 15 friends to Ibiza on a private jet. The bill for the villa, the yachts, the security, and the parties allegedly ran into the 7 figures. He was 23 years old. He had just won the treble, and he was celebrating the way a lottery winner celebrates. Barcelona teammates were noticing. Pep Guardiola, who by then had left the club but still had ears inside the dressing room, reportedly told friends that he had never seen a talent like Neymar, and had never seen a talent so distracted by everything that talent could buy him. But hey, if you are enjoying this deep dive so far, do us one favor before we move on. Smash that like button, and drop a comment telling us which player of his generation you think came closest to matching prime Neymar. It genuinely helps this channel reach more football fans who want the full and censored story, not the sanitized version. Back to the pitch. The 2015 to 2016 season was, arguably, the peak of Neymar's Barcelona career. 31 goals, 27 assists, player of the match performances in La Liga Clásicos. And then came the summer of 2016 and the Copa America Centenario in the United States, where Neymar did not travel because he wanted to focus on the Rio Olympics instead. Brazil crashed out in the group stage without him. He then led the Olympic squad to a gold medal, scoring the decisive penalty in the final against Germany at the Maracana, a symbolic exorcism of the 7-1 wound. He cried on the pitch. He cried on the podium. He kissed the medal. It felt like a coronation. And it was, in a way, because within 12 months, Neymar Junior was going to make the decision that changed the course of world football. The transfer that broke the market. The move that split Barcelona fans down the middle and haunts them to this day. The moment when Neymar looked at Messi, looked at himself, and decided that being the second best player in the world was not enough. It started of all places in a Champions League round of 16 tie against Paris Saint-Germain. To understand what happened next, you have to understand what 6-1 means in Barcelona. On February 14, 2017, Paris Saint-Germain hosted Barcelona in the first leg of the Champions League round of 16 at the Parc des Princes. What followed was one of the most complete European tactical dismantlings of the decade. PSG won 4-0. Angel Di Maria at his devastating best. Julian Draxler, freshly arrived from Wolfsburg, running the show. Edinson Cavani banging goals in against a defense that looked lost. Barcelona were embarrassed. Luis Enrique looked at reporters afterward and said, with a strange half-smile, that if PSG could beat Barcelona 4-0, Barcelona could beat PSG 6-0. Nobody believed him. Not the pundits. Not the bookmakers. Not even the Barcelona fans who bought tickets to the return leg at the Camp Nou 3 weeks later. In the history of the Champions League, no team had ever overturned a 4-goal deficit in the knockout rounds. Ever. And then Neymar Junior wrote his masterpiece. The Camp Nou was already 3 goals to the good by halftime. Suarez, an own goal from PSG, and a Messi penalty. The stadium was electric, but everyone knew a fourth was coming. Everyone also knew that PSG only needed 1 away goal to make the tie mathematically impossible. In the 62nd minute, Cavani scored. That should have ended the dream. Barcelona now needed 3 goals in less than 30 minutes. Enter Neymar. In the 88th minute, he curled a free kick over the wall and into the top corner. In the 90th minute, he stepped up and buried a penalty into the roof of the net. And then, in stoppage time, with the referee about to blow the final whistle, he stood over the ball on the left flank and floated across into the box that Sergi Roberto met with a stretched right boot. 6-1. Camp Nou erupted. Grown men wept. Barcelona had done the impossible. Neymar collapsed to his knees, sobbing, arms outstretched to the heavens. 2 goals, 1 assist, and the greatest 95th minute of his life. He had single-handedly turned the tie. He had carried Barcelona into the quarterfinals. He had done what nobody, not even Messi, could do that night. He was the hero. Undeniably. Absolutely. Forever. The next morning, he opened the newspapers. The front pages did not show Neymar sobbing. They did not show Neymar celebrating. They showed Lionel Messi standing on the barrier separating the pitch from the fans, arms wide, face contorted in ecstasy, silhouetted against the floodlights. La remontada. La Messi. The comeback belonged, in the eyes of the world press, to the little Argentine number 10, not to the Brazilian number 11 who had scored twice and assisted the third. According to multiple reports from Spanish and Brazilian journalists close to the situation, that night was the turning point. Neymar reportedly said to close friends, in private, some version of the same thing. As long as Lionel Messi is at this club, I will never be the main character. I will never win the Ballon d'Or. I will always be the second banana. The prince, never the king. He was 25 years old. He was in his prime. And he was deciding that Barcelona was no longer his home. Meanwhile in Paris, an unlikely group of men were watching. Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the president of PSG and the frontman for the state of Qatar. Antero Enrique, the sporting director who spoke the language of agents better than anyone in Europe. And in Doha, a small circle of Qatari executives who had a very specific ambition. They wanted their club to win the Champions League. They wanted to buy the Ballon d'Or. And they had noticed with great interest that the man who had just single-handedly beaten them in the Camp Nou looked like a man who wanted out. They picked up the phone. They called Neymar's father, who had always been the true deal-maker in the family. They laid out an offer that had never been made in the history of the sport. A release clause of 222 million euros, paid in cash, in full, plus a personal salary of approximately 30 million euros per year net, plus signing bonuses, plus loyalty payments, plus a private jet, plus a mansion in Bougival, plus complete creative control over sponsorships, marketing, and personal image. For a boy who had grown up in a two-bedroom apartment in São Vicente, sharing a room with his sister and his cousins, it was not a contract. It was a fantasy made real. And on August 3, 2017, Neymar Junior walked into the Barcelona training ground, told his teammates goodbye through tears, and flew to Paris to become the most expensive footballer who had ever lived. The football world had never seen anything like it, and nothing ever again would be the same. The transfer broke football. There's no other way to describe it. 222 million euros. In one payment. Wired from a Qatari bank to a Catalan bank. Barcelona had built the contract release clause thinking it was untouchable. It was designed to be a psychological barrier as much as a financial one. No club on earth, they assumed, would ever be reckless enough to actually pay it. Qatar paid it before lunch on a Thursday. The paperwork was submitted to La Liga. La Liga initially refused to accept it. PSG's lawyers dropped the cash on La Liga's desk in person. La Liga had no choice. The deal was done. Neymar walked out of the Camp Nou. Gerard Piqué famously tweeted a single word that morning. Se queda. He stays. It aged like milk in the Sahara. Within hours, Piqué deleted the tweet, and Barcelona fans burned Neymar's shirts in the street. They called him a traitor. They called him a mercenary. They called him worse things that will not make it into this video. The overwhelming emotion in Catalonia, in one word, was betrayal. But in Paris, it was Christmas morning. The presentation at the Parc des Princes drew more media than any player unveiling in the history of the sport. More than Ronaldo at Real Madrid in 2009. More than Zidane in 2001. Neymar walked out in a PSG shirt, held the jersey up to a sold-out crowd, and delivered a speech about being drawn to Paris by the ambition of the project. Nobody believed a word of it. Everyone knew he was drawn to Paris by three things: money, freedom from Messi's shadow, and Paris itself. Because here is what does not get talked about enough. Paris was not just a football destination for Neymar. Paris was Ibiza with better restaurants. It was a city where he could disappear into a private club at 4 in the morning and nobody would post the video. It was a city where his parka could rent an entire hotel floor for a birthday party, and the tabloids would treat it as glamour instead of scandal. And the mansion in Bougival, on the western outskirts of Paris, was set up with a nightclub-grade sound system, a private cinema, a full-time chef, and enough spare bedrooms to house every one of his friends indefinitely. Reports from that era, some of them from French sports magazines like L'Equipe, some from Brazilian outlets like UOL, all painted the same picture. Neymar was throwing parties on a schedule that would have exhausted an actual DJ. Birthdays, album releases from Brazilian musician friends, post-match victories, sometimes just Tuesdays. His birthday parties in particular, which he began holding every February in Paris, became legendary. Multiple hundred guest lists, chartered flights bringing friends from Sao Paulo, custom-built stages, live performances from Anitta, Ludmilla, and Kavinho. And according to more than one leak, an explicit rule that no cell phone cameras were allowed inside the venue. Now, none of that would have mattered if Neymar had also been producing on the pitch. And in his first season, to be fair, he was 19 goals in 20 League One appearances. He was toying with defenders who had never seen anything like him. League One, for all its dismissive reputation, was witnessing something spectacular. Neymar looked like the best player in the world some nights. Free of Messi's shadow. Free to be the number one. And then, on February 25, 2018, in a routine home match against Marseille, he came down on the outside of his right foot. His metatarsal snapped. Season over. Champions League tie against Real Madrid 2 weeks away. He would miss it. PSG would lose. The pattern was beginning. Now here is the part where we need to be honest, because we said at the start of this video we would be. Neymar's injuries are not myth. They are real. He has suffered metatarsal fractures, ligament tears in his ankle, adductor issues, and eventually the anterior cruciate ligament rupture that essentially ended his career at the top level. Any doctor will tell you that a player who dribbles the way Neymar dribbles, who invites contact the way Neymar invites contact, and who plays with the same explosive change of direction match after match, is going to accumulate wear and tear that other stylistically simpler players do not. But that is not the whole story. And this is where things get uncomfortable for Neymar defenders. Because the pattern that emerged from 2018 onward was not just a pattern of injuries. It was a pattern of injuries plus recovery delays plus fitness question marks plus off-season weight gain plus late returns to training. The same club sources that leaked information about parties also leaked information about how difficult it was to get Neymar back into elite match fitness after every setback. His recovery timelines were, according to multiple French journalists, consistently longer than the medical staff recommended. And in the middle of the recovery periods, he was often photographed on beaches in Trancoso, on yachts off the coast of Angra dos Reis, and at parties in Rio de Janeiro that his own physiotherapists had not been informed about. He was doing what he loved. He was being who he was. But he was also slowly making a choice. And Paris was watching. Doha was watching. Brazil was watching. And Kylian Mbappé, the 19-year-old French phenom who was next to him in the dressing room, was watching most carefully of all. Kylian Mbappé arrived at Paris Saint-Germain in the same summer as Neymar. Officially on loan from Monaco, with a purchase clause that made him the second most expensive teenager in football history. Neymar was supposed to be the king. Mbappé was supposed to be the crown prince, learning at the master's feet, waiting his turn. That is not how it went. Not even close. Mbappé was the opposite of Neymar in almost every way that mattered off the pitch. He lived with his mother. He did not drink. He did not smoke. He went to bed at 11 at night. He ate the same disciplined diet that his nutritionist recommended, at the same times every day, 7 days a week. He showed up to training first and left last. He never missed a session. He never gained weight. He never made a headline for anything except football. And on the pitch, when Neymar was missing, and Neymar was missing a lot, Mbappé simply took over the team. The numbers from that era are brutal. In Neymar's first 4 seasons at PSG, from 2017 to 2021, he missed a staggering number of matches. 58 domestically, roughly 1 out of every 3 games. He missed key Champions League ties every single season. Real Madrid in 2018, Manchester United in 2019, Bayern Munich in 2021. Meanwhile, Mbappé started stringing together seasons of 30, 35, 40 goals. He won a World Cup with France in 2018 before his 20th birthday. He was named League One Player of the Year almost automatically. And within 18 months of his arrival, the marketing arm of PSG began quietly shifting focus. The billboards outside the Parc des Princes started to change. The face on the club's official documentary series started to change. The keychains, the shirts, the branded merchandise. Mbappé was becoming the face of the project. Neymar was becoming the expensive complication. Inside the dressing room, according to leaks that eventually made it into every major French football publication, tensions were mounting. Neymar wanted the penalties. Mbappé wanted the penalties. They argued about it publicly during matches. Cavani had already been pushed out. Coaches came and went. Unai Emery, Thomas Tuchel, Mauricio Pochettino. Each one arrived promising to manage the 2 egos, and each one left saying, essentially, the same thing off the record. It cannot be done. The parties did not stop. If anything, they got bigger. In 2019, Neymar's 27th birthday celebration in Paris became a scandal in the French press because it was held on a Wednesday, 48 hours before a League One match. Photos leaked of him in a giant white bathrobe, ordering champagne, surrounded by his parka, at what looked like 6 in the morning. He played on the Friday. He looked tired. PSG lost. The French sports paper L'Equipe put him on the cover with a headline that translated roughly to the man who chose the wrong life. He did not care. Or if he cared, he did not show it. He kept flying friends in. He kept renting islands in Brazil for New Year's Eve. He kept buying luxury cars that he barely drove. His garage in Bougival reportedly held a Ferrari 458, a Lamborghini Aventador worth around $400,000, a Porsche Cayenne, a Maserati, a Mercedes-Benz Maybach with custom Neymar-branded interior stitching, and an Audi RS Series wagon for what he apparently called family days. He owned a private island off the coast of Rio near Angra dos Reis that he had purchased for approximately $8 million, complete with a private helipad, a full staff, and a football pitch he almost never used for actual football. Now, real quick, if this deep dive is delivering for you, please take 1 second and hit that subscribe button before we go any further. We are about to get into the darkest chapter of his career, the 2018 World Cup, and everything that came after depends on what happened in Russia that summer. We want you along for the full journey. And here is the tragedy of it all. Nobody, and we mean nobody, questioned the raw talent. When Neymar was fit and focused and actually turned up, he was still capable of producing moments that no other footballer on earth could produce. Against Manchester United in 2020, against RB Leipzig, against Borussia Dortmund, there were games where he made grown professional defenders look like Sunday League players. Rio Ferdinand said on record that on his day, prime Neymar was untouchable. Jamie Carragher said the same. Even Cristiano Ronaldo, never particularly generous with praise for rivals, admitted that Neymar was one of the most gifted attackers ever born. But those days became less frequent. And the days when he simply did not show up, whether because of injury, fatigue, or something in between that nobody wanted to name, became more frequent. The trend line was undeniable. And then, in the summer of 2018, he stepped onto the biggest stage in football with a chance to answer every critic and rewrite every narrative. The World Cup in Russia. Brazil. 26 years old. The prime of his career. The redemption arc he needed. It went so badly it might have broken him permanently. The 2018 World Cup in Russia was supposed to be Neymar Junior's coronation. He had recovered from metatarsal injury just in time. He was back to full fitness, according to the medical team. Tite, the manager, had built a stable and disciplined Brazilian side around him, with Case Moreau anchoring the midfield, Marcelo attacking down the left, and Gabriel Jesus, Coutinho, and Willian rotating in support. The draw had been kind. The expectations were, for once, controlled. Brazil were not the tournament favorites. Germany, France, and Spain were rated ahead of them. The pressure on Neymar was, in relative terms, manageable. And Neymar responded by producing one of the most embarrassing tournament performances by any superstar in the history of the World Cup. The football itself was uneven. He scored 2 goals across 5 matches. He set up a handful more. He looked half-fit in some games and completely off the pace in others. But the football is not what people remember from Russia 2018. What people remember is the diving, the rolling, the theatrical exaggeration of every single contact. Every time an opposing defender came within a meter of him, Neymar would collapse to the ground clutching his ankle, his knee, his ribs, his face, sometimes multiple body parts at once. He would then roll across the turf, dramatically, sometimes rolling 3, 4, 5 full rotations before coming to stop and clutching a completely different part of his body from the one he had been holding a moment earlier. It became, within days, a global meme. Compilation videos on YouTube racked up tens of millions of views. Chat show hosts did impressions of it. Children in schoolyards mocked it. Even his own countrymen, Brazilian fans who had grown up worshipping the Seleção number 10, started openly making fun of him. There is a viral clip of an entire Sao Paulo bar erupting in laughter as they watch Neymar do one of his tumbles during the round of 16 against Mexico. That kind of laughter from your own people is the sound of a legacy dying in real time. The moment that broke him publicly came in the quarterfinal against Belgium. Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, and Romelu Lukaku ripped Brazil apart tactically. Belgium won 2-1. Neymar had a strong second half, but could not find the breakthrough. And in the aftermath, he did not stand at the microphone like a captain and take responsibility. He did not apologize to the fans. He disappeared into a media silence that lasted for weeks. When he finally spoke, in a Gillette commercial of all places, his statement was framed as an emotional monologue about how the criticism had hurt him, about how the world had been too hard on him, about how nobody understood the pressure. It was tone-deaf. It was self-pitying. And it was, in the eyes of an enormous number of Brazilians, the moment the country stopped identifying with him. Because here is the thing. Brazil forgives a lot. Brazil forgave Adriano, the Imperator, when he drank himself out of the game. Brazil forgave Ronaldinho after his own decline. Brazil forgave Ronaldo Fenomeno for every injury and every scandal because he showed up and delivered when it mattered. What Brazil struggles to forgive is a superstar who acts like a victim. And Neymar, in the summer of 2018, acted like a victim. The rest of that year was rough. His return to PSG was overshadowed by trade rumors. He wanted to go back to Barcelona. He publicly said so. His agent worked the phones. Barcelona, still smarting from 2017, publicly rejected him. Real Madrid, which had briefly been interested, pulled back. He was stuck in Paris. He was stuck in a system that no longer wanted him as the main man. And the parties, the private jets, and the Instagram posts kept coming, but the tone of the coverage had changed. He was no longer a phenomenon. He was becoming a cautionary tale. Then, in January of 2019, a woman named Najla Trindade traveled from Rio to Paris and accused Neymar of rape. The case dominated Brazilian headlines for months. Neymar denied everything and released private WhatsApp messages, which itself became a legal scandal because sharing them was illegal under Brazilian privacy law. The case was eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence and inconsistencies in the accuser's account. Prosecutors declined to file charges. But the damage to his image, especially among female fans, was permanent. The Gillette contract, the Nike partnership, and several other brands quietly reduced his visibility in their campaigns for the following year. He was 27 years old. He had not won a Champions League on his own. He had not won a World Cup. He had not won a Ballon d'Or. He had been surpassed inside his own club by a French teenager. He had been mocked globally for his behavior at the World Cup. And he was now facing serious personal allegations that would follow him for the rest of his career. The Neymar Junior of Barcelona 2015 was gone, and he was not coming back. But there was one last flicker of the old fire left. One last moment where the football world remembered why they had once put this man on such an impossibly tall pedestal. It came in the summer of 2020, inside a bubble in Lisbon, at the strangest Champions League tournament of all time. The 2019-2020 season ended in chaos because of the COVID-19 pandemic. League stopped. Tournaments were suspended. And when UEFA finally figured out how to finish the Champions League, they did it in an unprecedented format. A single-leg knockout tournament held over 10 days in August inside a strict biosecurity bubble in Lisbon, Portugal. No fans, no traveling, no home advantage. Just 8 teams, 1 stadium, and the trophy. PSG had never made a Champions League final in their entire history. Not once. The Qatari project, launched in 2011, had spent nearly a decade and over €1 billion trying to buy the trophy that would legitimize them as one of Europe's true elite clubs. And here finally was their chance. In a neutral venue, against opponents forced to play the same conditions. With Neymar Junior having recovered from another injury just in time, ready to lead. And for a brief, glorious 2 weeks, Neymar looked like the player everyone remembered. In the quarterfinal against Atlanta, he was the difference. He created both goals in the second-half comeback. He turned defenders inside out. He hugged his teammates like a man possessed. Against RB Leipzig in the semi-final, he ran the entire match. Assists, chances, runs, leadership. He was carrying PSG on his back the way he had once carried Barcelona in the Camp Nou against these very same French champions. And then came the final. August 23, 2020. PSG versus Bayern Munich at the Stadio de Luz. Bayern were the best team in the world that season. They had already destroyed Barcelona 8-2 in the quarterfinal. They had a machine of a midfield with Kimmich, Goretzka, and Thiago. They had Robert Lewandowski in the form of his life. They had Alphonso Davies burning down the left flank. And they had a Julian Nagelsmann-style pressing structure that suffocated everything in front of them. But for the first hour of that match, Neymar Junior was the best player on the pitch. He had chances. He hit the post. He forced Manuel Neuer into world-class saves. He danced past 3 defenders and set up Angel Di Maria for a shot that was blocked. He was, for those first 60 minutes, absolutely there, absolutely engaged, absolutely playing for the trophy that would rewrite his entire legacy. Kingsley Coman scored in the 59th minute. A header off a Joshua Kimmich cross. 1-0 to Bayern. Neymar tried. He kept trying. He created a chance in the 78th minute that Kylian Mbappé squandered. He created another in the 85th minute. But Bayern held on. The final whistle blew. Neymar collapsed to the pitch, tears streaming down his face, in a way that he had not cried since 2017 in the Camp Nou. He came so close, and he lost. Now, if you were watching that final live, you might remember the strange feeling of that image. Neymar sobbing, alone on the grass, refusing to get up for what felt like a full minute. Some people said it was the most vulnerable he had ever been on camera. Others said, more cynically, that if he had cared this much on the training pitch during the previous 3 years, PSG might have already won the trophy by then. Both takes had truth in them. Both takes revealed the paradox of Neymar. He was capable of caring more than anyone, when it suited him, when the cameras were on, when the moment was big enough. The next season, everything shifted again. Mauricio Pochettino was brought in as manager. The relationship between Neymar and Mbappé, according to French journalist Julien Laurens and multiple others, was strained. And in the summer of 2021, the Qatari owners of PSG made a decision that told Neymar exactly where he now stood in the pecking order. They signed Lionel Messi, the man Neymar had fled from in 2017. The shadow he had spent 180 million euros of Qatari money to escape. He was now back, sitting next to him in the same dressing room, wearing the same colors, sharing the same coach. There is a widely circulated photo from Messi's PSG presentation where Neymar is smiling next to him, but if you zoom in on the eyes, you can see something else. Resignation. The realization that even here, in the city he had come to conquer, he would once again be the second banana. He tried to spin it publicly. He wrote a long Instagram post about how happy he was to reunite with his best friend, how the trio of Messi, Neymar, and Mbappé was going to write history, how Paris was about to become the center of the football universe. Behind the scenes, according to Brazilian outlet Globosport, he told close friends a much simpler thing. This was not the plan. But the parties continued, bigger than ever, because now there were two global superstars in Paris. And Neymar, in his own way, still knew how to be the host with the most. The 2021-2022 season at PSG was supposed to be the coronation. Instead, it turned into one of the most spectacular collective failures in recent European football history. And the story of that failure runs directly through the private life of Neymar Junior. Let us set the scene. PSG had assembled, on paper, the most star-studded attacking trident in the sport. Messi, Neymar, Mbappé. Combined, over 1 billion euros of transfer market value. Combined, 17 Ballon d'Or nominations. Combined, the ability to walk into any club on earth and be handed the number 10 shirt. League One was a formality. The domestic cups were bonuses. The Champions League was the sole reason for the season's existence. Everything else was decoration. And it crashed out in the round of 16 to Real Madrid in a way that would haunt the club for years. The first leg at the Parc des Princes ended 1-0 to PSG. Mbappé scored. Messi missed a penalty. Neymar was honestly ineffective. He was playing at maybe 70% fitness after another ankle setback. He was also, according to French media reports that circulated at the time, running on very little sleep. The night before the first leg, sources claimed, Neymar had hosted a small gathering at his home that ran late. Nothing scandalous. Nothing photographable. Just Neymar being Neymar. But small gatherings the night before a Champions League knockout tie, when you are supposed to be the leader of a team hunting Europe's biggest trophy, tell a story of their own. The second leg in the Bernabeu was one of the wildest matches of a decade. PSG were up 2-0 on aggregate at halftime. Karim Benzema then scored 3 goals in 17 minutes. Real Madrid won 3-1 on the night, 3-2 on aggregate, and dumped PSG out. Cameras caught the PSG dressing room afterward. Nasser Al-Khelaifi allegedly stormed into the referee's area and had to be physically restrained. Leonardo, the sporting director, was fired within weeks. Pochettino was on borrowed time. And the fanbase at the following home match booed Neymar and Messi throughout the entire 90 minutes. Messi, they booed for underperforming. Neymar, they booed for existing. His own crowd, in his own home stadium, had turned on him permanently. And Neymar's response to being publicly humiliated was, characteristically, to throw a bigger party for his upcoming birthday. According to Le Parisien, which broke the story with photographs and guest list leaks, Neymar's 30th birthday celebration was one of the most extravagant in the club's history. 3 consecutive days of parties. Over 300 guests. Rented venues across Paris. Private security. Chartered flights from Brazil for musicians. And a rumored budget in the 7 figures. Held during the actual season. Between matches. If you have been following along, you can already see the pattern. Every setback was met with escalation, not retreat. Every criticism was met with defiance, not reflection. Every loss on the pitch was followed by an even bigger performance off it. Neymar was not living the life of an athlete anymore. He was living the life of a celebrity who happened to play football on the weekends. The parties in Rio de Janeiro during the off-seasons were even more extreme. His private island, Ilha de Coxa, became a semi-annual pilgrimage site for the Parça and for musicians, models, influencers, and international friends. Photos and drone footage that leaked from those trips showed water slides installed for the summer, custom-built floating bars, 24-hour chef service, and enough alcohol to sink a small yacht. When Neymar's own doctors, hired by PSG, tried to schedule off-season fitness monitoring, they were reportedly denied access to the island for weeks at a time. The football, meanwhile, kept declining. He scored 13 goals in League One that season. Respectable, but not superstar numbers. He missed 22 matches across all competitions. He was routinely benched for tactical reasons. His body was slower. His touch was heavier. His acceleration, once the defining quality of his game, was measurably reduced. The best analytical outlets in Europe, including The Athletic and StatsBomb, publish pieces showing that Neymar's ball progression numbers, his one-on-one dribble success rates, and his shot creation from open play had all dropped meaningfully compared to his prime years at Barcelona. He was 29. He should have been at his physical peak. Instead, he was decaying in real time. And the Qatar World Cup in the winter of 2022 was coming. His last real shot at legacy. His final chance to write the ending he had been chasing since 2014. The last opportunity for Neymar Junior to shut every doubter up and hoist the one trophy that would put his name next to Pelé forever. He was going to take that shot, and he was going to break your heart with it. Qatar 2022. Neymar Junior, 30 years old, his third World Cup, almost certainly his last. Tite had built a Brazilian squad around him one more time. Vinicius Junior, Rafinha, Richarlison, and Antony gave him more speed and creativity in support than he had ever had. Casemiro remained the midfield anchor. Marquinhos and Thiago Silva led the defense. Alisson was in goal. On paper, this was the best Brazilian squad since 2006. And every serious oddsmaker in the world had them as the tournament favorites. The opening match against Serbia was a struggle until Richarlison produced a moment of gymnastic brilliance. Neymar played well. 2 chances, several nice combinations, no goal. And in the second half, he came off with tears in his eyes, holding his ankle, having been kicked by Serbian defender Nikola Milinkovic. Diagnosis: ligament damage. He would miss at least the next 2 group games, possibly the entire tournament. Brazil, however, played beautifully without him. They beat Switzerland 1-0. They rotated the squad against Cameroon and lost meaninglessly. They advanced as group winners. And by the round of 16 against South Korea, Neymar was back. Older, slower, but back. And what followed in that game against South Korea was maybe the last truly beautiful moment of his career. Brazil scored 4 in the first half. It was jazz. It was samba. It was the Brazilian football of childhood dreams. And Neymar, on a penalty in the 12th minute, calmly slotted the ball down the middle for his 77th international goal, tying him with Pelé for the all-time Brazilian scoring record. The image of Neymar celebrating that goal, arms outstretched, Vinicius sprinting toward him, the Selecao teammates in a huddle around him, felt for a moment like the coronation the country had been waiting for. The quarterfinal was against Croatia, and it went to extra time. And in the 105th minute of that match, Neymar Jr. scored one of the most gorgeous goals of the entire tournament. A dribble past 3 Croatian defenders, a 1-2 with Rodrigo, a slalom through the box, and a chip over Dominik Livakovic that felt like Pelé himself was guiding his boots. 77 goals had now become 77 and rising. He had just done it. He had just delivered a Pelé-esque moment in a World Cup knockout tie. He was going to lead Brazil to the semi-final, then the final, then the trophy. The universe had other plans. Croatia equalized in the 117th minute. Bruno Petkovic, a substitute who had barely played, poked one home from a scrappy corner. The match went to penalties. Rodrigo missed the first Brazilian kick. Marquinhos hit the post with the 4th. And Neymar Jr., who was supposed to take Brazil's 5th penalty, the one that would have kept the shootout alive, never got to take it. Croatia won the shootout before it was his turn. Neymar sat on the pitch in Al Rayyan, not sobbing this time, just sitting, staring at nothing, frozen. The entire tournament, the entire 8-year arc from Belo Horizonte to Doha, had ended on a penalty shootout in which he had been left holding an unused kick. His body, which had betrayed him for years, had brought him to this final page. And the final page had been ripped out of the book before he could sign it. He walked off the pitch. He walked into the tunnel. He walked into the rest of his career. Back at PSG, he lasted less than a season more. In February of 2023, he suffered another ankle injury and missed the remainder of the campaign. That summer, PSG made the decision that had been coming for years. They wanted him gone. They shopped him to Manchester United. They shopped him to Newcastle. They shopped him to Chelsea. None of them wanted the salary. None of them wanted the baggage. The only offer that came in and stuck was from Saudi Arabia. Al Hilal, 90 million euros in salary per year guaranteed, plus signing bonuses, plus a villa, plus everything else the Saudi Pro League was offering to lure aging European superstars into the desert. Neymar signed. He flew to Riyadh. He posed with the shirt. He gave the press conference. He said all the right things about the ambition of the project, and nobody believed him this time either, because nobody had believed him about Paris. And then, in October of 2023, in a routine World Cup qualifier for Brazil against Uruguay, he twisted his knee on a non-contact play. Anterior cruciate ligament, torn, plus the meniscus, plus the medial collateral. The most devastating knee injury a footballer can suffer at the age of 31, after a decade of accumulated wear and tear. The doctors said he would be out for at least a year. He was out for closer to 16 months. By the time he returned to fitness, in late 2024, he was 32 years old. He had played fewer than 10 matches for Al Hilal in his entire tenure. And when his contract was quietly not renewed in the summer of 2025, he returned to Santos, the club where his story had started, as a shadow of the player Brazil had once called the future. The story was over. The prime was gone. The legacy was written. And for the first time, the football world had to sit with what that legacy actually was. So let us do what we promised at the beginning of this video. Let us look honestly and completely at the man Neymar Jr. became versus the man he could have been. Not the fantasy version, not the fairy tale, the real ledger. On the credit side, and it is a large credit side, he is one of the greatest Brazilian players ever born. He is the all-time top scorer for the Seleção, having passed Pelé-esque record in September of 2023. He won a Champions League. He won a treble with Barcelona. He won an Olympic gold medal, which for Brazil meant more than most Champions League trophies. He won multiple League One titles. He was named to FIF Pro World 11 teams. He scored over 400 career goals. He was at his peak, the most watched, most copied, and most discussed footballer of an entire generation of children in Brazil, Africa, and Southeast Asia. There are kids in Dakar and in Jakarta, and in Recife, who wear his number 10 because is the only number 10 that ever mattered to them. That legacy is not small. On the debit side, however, is the football he never played. Neymar Jr., according to most serious analysts, had the raw ability to be the third best player of all time, possibly higher. He had a technical ceiling that only Messi and Ronaldinho could match. He had a physical explosiveness that neither of them had. He was left-footed, right-footed, two-footed. He could shoot from distance. He could finish inside the box. He could dribble past entire defenses. He could play as a false nine, as a winger, or as a number 10. He was, in most literal sense, the perfect footballer. And he did not win a Ballon d'Or. He did not win a World Cup. He did not carry any team. He was on to the peak of the sport by himself, even once. He was the most expensive footballer of all time, and he did not deliver a Champions League to the club that paid the fee. And when you compare his prime years, roughly 2015 to 2020, against the prime years of Messi, Ronaldo, Zidane, or Ronaldinho, the gap in accomplishment is enormous. Bigger than the gap in talent, which is exactly what makes his story a tragedy. Now here is the part nobody wants to say clearly. His injuries are not the full explanation. Yes, they were real. Yes, they were severe. Yes, the way he plays invites contact. But he also missed matches for reasons unrelated to injury. He recovered slower than the medical staff advised. He returned to Brazil during recovery windows to attend Carnival. He hosted parties during the season. He hosted parties before matches. He filled his life and his time and his energy with everything except the disciplined obsession that separates the very great from the greatest of all time. Compare it to Cristiano Ronaldo, who at 40 years old is still playing at a high level because he treats his body like a laboratory instrument. Compare it to Lionel Messi, who barely drinks, does not smoke, and has spent his entire adult life prioritizing training over everything else. Compare it to Kylian Mbappé, sitting next to him at PSG for 6 years, watching him, learning what not to do, and building himself into the current heir to the crown. Neymar had the same starting point. He just chose a different life. And that is the honest answer to the question we opened this video with. Was he unlucky, or was he his own worst enemy? The answer, as much as Brazilian fans do not want to hear it, is both. He was unlucky. Bad tackles, bad timing, bad opponents in bad tournaments. But he was also, undeniably, the architect of his own smaller legacy. The parties, the Parça, the private island, the delayed recoveries, the endless distractions of a life built for celebrity instead of an athlete. All of it was a choice, and every choice had a cost. And the sum of those costs is the difference between the Neymar we got and the Neymar we could have had. Which brings us to the real tragedy. Not that he failed, because he did not fail. He is one of the greatest players who ever lived. The tragedy is the ghost of the player he was supposed to be. The Neymar who could have been sitting in a room with Messi and Ronaldo as an equal in the conversation about the greatest of all time. That version is gone and is never coming back. So we want to hear from you. 3 questions. Answer them in the comments and be specific, because we read them and we build future videos from them. First, do you think Neymar Jr. was more the victim of bad luck or more the cause of his own downfall? Second, if you could take away one thing from his lifestyle, the parties, the Parça, the private island, or the delayed recoveries, which one would you take away to give him the best chance at greatness? And third, do you think there is any way Neymar can rebuild a meaningful legacy in the next 3 years at Santos, or is the story already fully written? If you made it this far, drop the like button, because it genuinely helps this channel grow and reach more real football fans who are tired of the sanitized takes you get everywhere else. Subscribe and ring the bell so you do not miss the next full breakdown, which is going to dive deep into another player whose story never got told the way it should have been told. And let us know in the comments who you want us to cover next. We are building this channel with you, because the story of football is not just about the players who won everything. It is about the players who could have won everything and chose not to. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.